Hello, and welcome back to our playthrough of Escape Velocity Nova. We are continuing with the Polaris storyline. So when we last left off, we had just dropped Miranda off here on Rebel 2 and had some brief discussions with the Rebellion High Command, and they had just clued us in to the nefarious operations of the Bureau of Internal Investigation. So now we're going to go meet Miranda in the bar. You are somewhat surprised to see Miranda wandering to the bar looking fresh, because you are fairly sure that she spent most of last night exploring the Rebel station. Once again, she seems to react to your gaze and turns to meet your eyes before coming over. I want to get back to Kalari as soon as we can, she tells you, her voice far more urgent than her smiling face would indicate. Last night I had a look around, and everything I've seen tells you that these rebels are indeed genuine about their intentions, and about the accusations they have made against this bureau. If this is all true, we will have to rethink our policies towards the Federation in a hurry. Let's take our download of their library, she tells you in a slightly louder voice, and say our farewells to our new friends. You're beginning to wonder about Miranda's abilities. She seems to not only be a consummate diplomat, but also a very capable spy. You shake your head and follow her as she leaves the bar. Miranda leads you to the conference room where you chatted with the rebel leaders yesterday. You see the 5 of them and Geoff Daniels sitting in discussion when you walk in. What you have told us is very disturbing, Miranda informs them without preamble. We will be returning to Polaris space immediately to inform the Council of the events here, and they will no doubt begin investigating your allegations against this Bureau of Internal Investigations and the Federation in general. If, as a result of our investigation, we find that your accusations are justified, we will recontact you, and may offer you our support. That is all we could ever ask of you, replies Dr. Pentecost. Would you like a copy of our library file on the Bureau to aid in your research? I have already obtained a copy, Miranda shrugs at their surprise. Our technology is more advanced than your own. Well, in that case, Dr. Pentecost replies politely, we thank you for taking the time to meet with us. Instead of just, stealing their library and leaving. Subtle art of Polaran diplomacy is, it's something. Ooh, a free trader. Let's get in on this. I'm gonna use a few Wraitheye, just to disable him from a distance so I don't have to fight that ion cannon. But that worked beautifully. The only trick now is we have to board it before the rebels blow it up. Ugh, this is the worst thing about the rebel system. Okay, that's fine. We can at least board this rebel Viper. Which they may not like, but hey, I don't care. It's gonna be mine. Oh, it's not gonna be mine. How sad. Well, we need to go back to Kalari. And the best place to do that from is Kania, of course. That Pirate Starbridge picked an awful system to be in. There's like 2 carriers and a destroyer here. Ooh, 2 specially named carriers. The UFS Excalibur and the UFS Razorback. We've actually seen the Razorback before in this playthrough, I believe. But I don't think I've seen Excalibur in recent memory. Alright, so I think we can make it to Kalari without having to stop to refuel, but yeah, we should be fine. We should be more than fine. And then we can see what's going on with the High Command and how they want to handle the Bureau. Also, Kalari is kind of interesting. We'll read the blurb there because I don't think I've done so yet this playthrough. It follows an interesting theme where there's a lot of systems which have planets with mysterious rings around them, and they were constructed by some prior civilization that no one knows about. Kontik, which is down in Auroran space, is one of these, perhaps the most notable one. You're met by Bisandrea and the leaders of the other 4 castes. Are they a danger? Asks Ayuso without preamble, in the musical Polaris tongue, which you are starting to get used to. I don't believe so, Miranda replies in a slightly deferential tone, but they may have revealed to us something else that is. And just what is this other hazard? Asks Bisandrea, after looking at the leader of the warrior caste in rebuke for his lack of protocol in speaking first. He looks slightly chastened. The Federation, Miranda answers in the same deferential tone. Or more specifically, the Bureau of Internal Investigation, which, according to the rebels, have taken over executive power within the Federation. In fact, they told us in no uncertain terms that they were not rebelling against the Federation, but against this Bureau specifically. And you believe them? Asks Bisandrea with a slightly narrowed eyes. Miranda nods. I will have to call an emergency session of the Council, Bisandrea continues thoughtfully. All caste leaders will be asked to attend, and I would suggest that you all make every effort to do so, as we will be deciding on policies that may well affect Polaris society for many centuries to come. And of course, she continues after turning to face you. Once again, we have to thank you for your role in this affair. You seem to be proving your worth as a friend of the Polaris people with an almost monotonous regularity. It would almost seem that you are somehow always the one who manages to be there when we have need of somebody outside our normal patterns of knowledge. At this, 3 of the cast leaders jerk their heads slightly in surprise. Both Miranda and Ayuso nod their heads, scrutinizing you thoughtfully. I have made sure, continues Bisandrea, that a sizable sum of money has been transferred into your account to use as you will. Know that you have my thanks, so high praise indeed from the leader of all of Polaris society. So Kalari. This is an M-class planet with an enormous artificial ring which the Polaris found intact. The best theory on how it was constructed is that the materials were taken from the relatively small gas giant also in the system, which used to be much larger. The haze surrounding it, which is thought to be around 500,000 years old, and will last for another 1.5 million before collapsing, is the remains of that process. This is both the capital of the Polaris and the homeworld of the Kalari, the leadership caste. Interestingly, the Kalari come from all the other castes, and have been chosen by the members of their own caste. The only criterion is that they be over a century old. The ruling council is 4 members from Nilkamora, 6 from the Varash, 8 from the Tripura, 5 from the Padat, and 1 from the Muharri. In addition, there is a leader who is given the title Bis. So the only caste there that we haven't met yet is the Tripura, but they're just the worker caste. They're also the most numerous caste, so it's a little bit weird you don't interact with them until a little bit later on. They're mentioned in passing sometimes, but there we go. So I'm going to head down to Varaki and see if we can get some fancy new technology to outfit our ship. I don't think it's available yet, but it never hurts to check, and quite frankly, we need to go around to random systems to get the next link in the chain to fire anyway. Which should be more taxi service. Much of this game is acting as intergalactic taxi. And sure enough, there's the next link in the chain. When you step off your ship, you are slightly surprised to see Miranda standing not more than 30 meters from you, chatting with a similarly sable-garbed man. You get that eerie feeling that both Miranda and her fellow Muharri turn to meet your gaze as if they can somehow sense your eyes on them. Miranda grins and makes her way over. "How's everything going?" she asks cheerfully. You mutter something non-committal, to which she laughs before turning back to her companion. "I've never met anyone quite so close-mouthed before." "This is Muevlin," she continues, indicating her fellow Muharri. "Muevlin, this is... we'll call you Ory'Hara for now." You cannot help but notice that not only Muevlin, but several members of the worker caste in the area look surprised when Miranda introduces you as Ory'Hara. Muevlin needs to get to Port Kane in the Cania system, Miranda tells you without further explanation. Can you get him there? Of course we can. We're the best intergalactic taxi in the galaxy. If you haven't already guessed, Miranda explained seriously, we are sending out feelers into the Federation to see if we can turn up anything against this bureau. The sooner we can get people in place, the better. Miranda starts to get up to leave, but you stop her with one word. Ory'Hara, you ask quietly. Muevlin grins slightly and looks away, but Miranda looks at you for a moment, obviously contemplating something. If you're going to be moving in and around the Federation, she explains somehow sadly, you'll need to be known by something other than your birth name, to protect your identity in the event that any of our people are caught. And somehow, I think the name will come to fit you better the longer you wear it. As she walks away, you realize that her somehow cryptic response brought up more questions than it answered. So, when do we go? Asks Muevlin, breaking your train of thought and bringing you back to the present. Very mysterious. So now we are Ory'Hara, which should be familiar to anyone who has played this game, as it features in 2 out of the 6 storylines. But Port Kane is not too far away. Yep. And the next couple missions are going to be of a similar vein of we have to transport Muharri into strategic positions throughout Federation space. What's fun though is... oh well, I won't ruin the surprise for when we get to Cania. But they're not super exciting missions, but they're a mite bit better than fetching supplies for Jay. Oh, how I hate fetching supplies for Jay. Regardless, it's neither here nor there, because we're almost in Cania. So, oh look, the Bureau is waiting for us. And, as you may imagine, they are in for a nasty surprise, because we have Wraitheye. Best they have is, well, they also have Wraitheye, strictly speaking, on the gunboats. But the best the normal ships have are, you know, Hellhound missiles. Which, you know, there's nothing to sneeze at. But we are going to do our best to deal with these as quickly and as aggressively as we can. Boom. I believe this one here is not actually part of the mission, so he's not hostile to us. We could blow him up for the hell of it, but I'm not going to bother. Alright, Cania. Or Port Kane, rather. Over the course of the flight, you get to know Mu'evlin quite well, learning a lot about his life and the Muharri in general. He tells you that the word Muharri literally translates as servants of all, but that the Muharri themselves think of it as meaning casteless, as they are the casteless caste. You learn that Mu'evlin originally trained to be a Varash in his youth, but failed the final test to become a fully fledged member, and so began his training as a Muharri. You are very surprised to hear that it took him slightly more than 5 decades to complete the training to finally become a Muharri. But when he tells you that he had to train to be conversant in physics, chemistry, laboring, engineering, biology, medicine, all forms of trade, mathematics, soldiery, mechanics, police work, intelligence and counterintelligence, law, diplomacy, and all forms of combat, you begin to realize why. But no Muharri ever goes on to master any particular discipline. That's a pretty tall order, even for 50 years. Oddly enough, the Muharri serve as judges over the Polaris, so the disagreements cannot get out of hand, as they did at the start of the Polaris Civil War centuries ago. It surprises you to hear someone speak so sadly of having to stand in judgment over their peers. It seems to you that the Muharri have a deep-seated sense of shame at their shortcomings, and at being placed above other Polarans. Perhaps this, and the fact that any Muharri must give aid to any other Polaris if asked, in fact many Muharri spend their lives wandering around Polaris space helping out whenever they can, was an intentional effort on the part of the people who originally created the Muharri to keep them from ever abusing their position of power within Polaris society. Meet me in the bar in a few hours, Mu'evlin tells you after thanking you for your help in getting him to the Federation. I need to make contact with other Muharri posted here before I can give you a return message to take back to Ory'Hara. Alright. After wandering the station for a few hours, you enter the bar, and after a couple of moments peering around, you spot the jet black hair and light blue eyes of Mu'evlin sitting at a table not far from the door, wearing casual Federation-style clothes. Tell Miranda that I have made contact, he says after you exchange greetings, and that so far nobody has heard anything detrimental about this bureau, but plenty about these rebels. We will continue looking into the situation more deeply rather than relying on media reports for our intelligence. Also, pass on that in all probability, he continues quietly, I'll have to call for further Muharri to be brought to the Federation in the future to liaise with Muharri in different areas of Federation space. And finally, he finishes sincerely, I want to thank you again for your help. You are becoming known throughout Polaris space as someone that can be turned to at any time for help, Ory'Hara. So once again, we are kind of the fitting into the Muharri caste in our own way. As he shakes your hand, you ask him if he can tell you anything about the name Miranda has given you. There is something of a legend behind you now, he smiles quietly, rising from his seat, and there is an even bigger legend surrounding the word Ory'Hara. But I do not think that is my place to inform you of it, and I doubt any other Polaris will do so for similar reasons. What I find interesting is sometimes the Polaris are referred to as Polaris, and sometimes they're referred to as Polarans. It's not consistent. Do not worry, he tells you in his reserved manner. In time, the legend of Ory'Hara will be revealed to you, and you will understand how much it means, and why you now wear the name you do. As he walks away, you shake your head, realizing that without saying much, Mu'evlin has raised your curiosity even further about the name that you have been given. It appears there is some sort of story behind the name Ory'Hara, and that it somehow can be applied to you. You shake your head again, deciding to ask about it further when you get to your destination, which of course is just going right back to Miranda. I'm not going to bother blowing up all these ships again, because, as previously stated, you can't board them. So it kind of takes away some of the incentive of blowing them up unless you're trying to increase your combat rating. Or you just really want to show off your fancy Polaris weaponry. Although we haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. The good weaponry is truly a sight to behold, and that's going to be a lot of fun. I especially like the large laser on the Scarab, because it actually comes out of the front part of the ship. It's like specially made for it. It's a pretty cool animation. I'm probably going to pick up a Scarab when it's available to us. Similarly, the Arachnid, like the 4 points on the Arachnid conjoin to make a beam, which is also pretty cool. Like, there's a lot of good good work that went into designing the Polaris ships. Alright. You step off your vessel to be greeted by a young woman wearing the normal black robes of Muharri, but with a grey collar. I am Nila, she introduces herself shyly. You guess that because she does not have the Mu prefix, the grey collar signifies that she has not yet finished her training to become a full Muharri. Miranda told me to wait for you when she was called away to serve elsewhere. She told me that you would have a message. You look at her for a long moment before passing on the information from Evelyn. I'll make sure that Miranda receives this information, Nila tells you seriously. She asked me to pass on her thanks and said that you should check the mission BBS because if more Muharri need to be taken into Federation space, she will post news of it there. As she walks away, you cannot help but smile at Miranda's absence. You wonder if she somehow managed to be elsewhere so that she would not have to avoid answering your questions about being called Ory'Hara. So there we go. The mystery surrounding our code name deepens. Nothing going on in the bar, we can just go to the mission BBS and oh look, there's something already waiting for us. Attention Ory'Hara. More evidence has been uncovered by Evelyn and his team. Unfortunately, it requires another Muharri to be sent to a different part of the Federation to follow it up. Let's go ahead and accept that. So a message to Ory'Hara from Miranda. Evelyn has managed to pass on some information I believe requires another Muharri to be transported to Earth in the Sol system to follow it up. I have chosen Mayana to do the job. She is currently located on Varasha in the Varashan system. She will provide you with any further details you need. Good luck. Alright, so I don't think we've been to the Varashan system, but it should be interesting. Ooh, this has a special name. I'm not going to try with this one. I have no idea how you pronounce that, but it does the prefix TRE, which indicates that it is probably owned by one of the worker caste in Polaris society. Alright, thankfully this system is pretty centrally located, so it should not be very difficult to get from there to Earth. Is this the homeworld for the Varash? I'll have to check. After going through your post-flight routine, you head out of your ship to meet this Mayana. You start to worry when 20 minutes pass and she fails to show. After an hour, you're about to try calling the port authorities to see if they can locate her when a short, slim woman with messy blonde hair walks up dragging a bag of what appears to be clothes. Hi, she smiles in greeting. I'm Mayana. Sorry I'm late, but a Varash asked me to help him out with an experiment. It took a bit longer than he anticipated. You're about to tell her that she should have told the Varash that she was required elsewhere, but then you remember that no Muharri can refuse to help if asked. So though she was probably agonizing over it, her social conditioning as Muharri probably prevented her from saying any such thing. Instead you just smile and wave it away, telling her that it does not matter. After helping her on board, you head back up to the cockpit to start prepping your ship for a long flight. Well, this does seem to be the homeworld of the Varash, as far as I can tell, so we'll read the blurb for it, as we will with all the cast homeworlds. The Varash, as the healers and engineer caste are known, make their home here. As Polaris technology became increasingly biological, professions of engineer and physician grew closer together. And as the caste system developed in Polaris society over the first century of its isolation, their work became intertwined as they came together in the same caste. Varashan is a highly technological world with buildings that are both hospitals and industrial workshops covering approximately a third of the surface of the planet. Nevertheless, a very beautiful world. Alright then. It's a little bit interesting that it doesn't have the same naming convention as the other cast homeworlds, where it seems that usually the cast homeworld is just named after the cast itself, or some similar pronunciation of it, like Ory'Hara sounds a lot like Muharri. The Kalari world is the homeworld of the Kalari cast. I don't know. Either way, you would expect that there's cool stuff to buy here. Unfortunately, there really isn't. But regardless, let's take this person to Earth. And once again, we'll have to deal with a Federation fighting force when we get there, but that's no issue. We've got plenty of Wraithai for them. I think once again we can get there on one tank of gas, as it were. I must admit, it would be nice to have the hypergate system functioning in Polaris space, but as I've pointed out in previous episodes, it makes more sense thematically that it doesn't. And I'm not about to install the plugin to make that make that so. Also, it would probably make things a little bit too easy. Oh, that Marauder is, you know, it's a bad place to be. Definitely don't want to tangle with the Polaris if you're flying just a modified Valkyrie. Alright, so let's see what we can do. Immediately turn around so we don't get caught out too badly. And then we're going to launch some Wraith-Eye. Going to stay here, hold our position, zap anything that comes into range. Yeah, this is the only thing I'm concerned about is the gunboats, but thankfully, I believe we have more Wraith-Eye cannons than they do. Shoot. Did that fail the mission? No. Cool. Alright, let's touch down. As soon as you land, you head back to help the slightly disorganized Mayana to get ready to infiltrate the Federation. You're surprised when you reach her room, you see her all packed up and dressed in common Federation clothing, ready to go. Once I reach your terminal, she tells you with a smile, I will authorize some money to be transferred into your account. It is the least I can do to repay you for all your help. No outsider has ever done so much for our nation, and very few Polarians have ever done so either. A lot of people have been questioning whether Miranda made the right decision, Mayana continues with a small, shrewd smile on her face, when she called you Ory'Hara. I must admit that I was one of them, but now that I've seen you in person, I can see that she very well may have made the right call. Still, there is much to be done before you can prove yourself worthy of that name, but you may just be able to do it. Alright, so we got a nice vote of confidence from Mayana. If any further Muharri require transport into Federation space, she tells you finally, Miranda will place a message for you on the various mission BBSs throughout Polaris space. As she walks away, you realize that her initial disorganized appearance was some sort of test, one which you somehow passed despite not knowing its exact nature. You have never misjudged someone so completely, and then it dawns on you that it just demonstrates the levels of training that the Muharri have achieved. Still, this question of why you've been named Ory'Hara continues to hang over your head. The more comments you receive about it, the more questions it raises. Obviously, it is something fairly important, at least to the Polaris, as apparently a fair few of them have heard of you receiving the name, and have been discussing whether or not you are worthy of it. You resolve once again to ask Miranda about it when you next meet her, whenever that is. I think we have yet another mission to bring in Muharri Infiltrator, so we will not get to catch up with Miranda immediately. We're going to try to get the mission in one of these systems which are fairly close to the Federation, because, I don't know, it'd be nice if we can minimize the number of jumps we have to do. I always like checking for interestingly named ships, because sometimes you get the unique ones that are fun. Or sometimes you get the, like, ATMOS people, or the Ambrosia people. But regardless, it doesn't look like we're going to be getting any of them this time. So let's touch down here and see if we can get a mission. Nope. And that's not enough to refresh it. Can I land here? No. Planet is too hostile. Alright, so we're going to have to go a little bit deeper into Polaris space, it looks like. That is fine by me. I think this is going to be the last time we have to ferry someone into the Federation. Once again, attention Ory'Hara. More evidence been uncovered by Evelyn and his team. Unfortunately requires another Muharri to be sent to a different part of the Federation to follow it up. Message to Ory'Hara from Miranda. Evelyn has managed to pass on some information that I believe requires another Muharri to be transported to New Babylon in the Nurse Primus system to follow it up. And I've chosen Mutren to do the job. He is currently located in Ory'Hara in the Treminer system. Any further details will be provided when you pick him up. Good luck. Tricky pronunciations. Alright. That's not too bad. It's not too far away. And maybe we can get him to reveal why we're called Ory'Hara. We seem to be piecing it together slowly as we talk to more people. Oh, you can land on the gas giant. How interesting. Oh, it's because of this little station. As soon as you open your hatch, you are greeted by an intense-looking gentleman with inky black hair and incisive ice-gray eyes. He steps forward and shakes your hand. I've heard a lot about you, Ory'Hara. He begins with a kind of intense casualness. All of it good. Thus far, Miranda naming of you has proved right. You look at him for a moment to gauge his temperament before asking him if he can enlighten you about the importance of this Ory'Hara business. He looks at you for several seconds before replying. No, I don't think I can. He tells you quietly. I want to give you every chance of proving yourself worthy of the name given to you, and I don't think that you could do that if you were forewarned and forearmed. Not that I actually know much about your trials to come. The future is far too fluid, and prophecy is such an imprecise art. Not even the Velos ever mastered it completely. In the meantime, he asked, changing the subject, when do we leave? I think the answer to that is right now. Alright, so he's going to Nurse Primus, New Babylon. I know it well. And thankfully has Hypergate, so we can just zip over to Cania, get into the Hypergate there, and it'll be a little bit faster. But planting all these operatives is kind of fun, because in other campaigns, you interact with the Muharri, and they already have this spy network in place, but we're kind of setting it up. That's what I like about EV Nova, is that when you're in a storyline, and this is most easily seen when you're doing the Auroran storyline, you have to go and meet with the pirate people, the Association of Free Traders, not be confused with the Associated Guild of Free Traders, which is McGowan's organization, but this is instead the one that you ally with when you do the pirate campaign, and there's a stand-in for the player with the same backstory and everything. I think is pretty neat. So it's kind of implied that all these are happening concurrently, and there's a little bit of divergence in which one is canon. As I've mentioned in a prior video, back when they were still planning to do a sequel to this, the so-called canon ending is actually the Auroran one. Because the sequel is going to be Shard Wars, where you, I think, have a Auroran Civil War or something. But that never really made it out of its initial stages. But that's okay. Sometimes things just don't work out. On your long journey to New Babylon, you get plenty of chances to talk to Mutren. You learn that he is one of the oldest serving Muharri alive, at 185 years of age, and that he has been a full Muharri for over a century. He tells you a lot about some of the things he has done in his lifetime. You are impressed by the absolute selflessness of his existence, and you tell him so. It is not enough, he tells you, his intense grey eyes growing sad. My shame is still yet unpaid. You press him a number of times to tell you more about being called Ory'Hara, but each time he gently puts you off. Finally, in disgust, you give up and ask him instead about his comments regarding the art of prophecy and the Velos. Many Polaris are telepaths. I am one, as is Miranda, he explains quietly, although none of us could ever rival the Velos in power and skill. Some telepaths are actually capable of looking into the future, although it is still misty and a little vague. This is what we call the art of prophecy. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, few telepaths have this ability, he continues explaining, and no Polaris has ever been able to deliberately seek prophecy, although it is believed that some of the ancient Velos could. However, even the prophecies of these ancient Velos masters were always vague and usually hard to understand, and very little is understood about how the art of prophecy actually works. The Pa'et have been studying it for centuries, and thus far seem no closer to an understanding than they were when they started. Mutren shakes his head slowly with a quiet smile, as if quietly laughing at the nature of life. When you finally get to New Babylon, he helps you with your post-flight routine, before shaking your hand and saying goodbye. Thanks for your help, he tells you with quiet sincerity. You have become something of a irreplaceable resource with all your skills and experience. I think that you may yet prove worthy of the name Ory'Hara. So once again, high praise from the people we're dropping off here. We're going to avoid being scanned. We don't have any illegal outfits, I don't think. So it's really just keep the theme of the campaign. Alright, and I think we're going to go and try to pick up the next chain, or link in the chain, before we call this an episode, although we are going to be coming up on half an hour soon. Mostly I just want to get back to Viraki and once again check in just to see if those tunneling organ, multi-jump organ, if those things are done being manufactured, because I'd really like that. Ooh, an Argosy. The best ship in the game. The Argosy. I kind of think of the Auroran Argosy as their version of a heavy shuttle. I know it's not really, it's more of their version of the Terrapin, but I'm not even sure that's even a perfect comparison. It's just, I don't understand the point of the Argosy. Alright. So cross your fingers for sweet, sweet outfits. Oh, there it is. It's a good day to be alive. The multi-jump organ. Alright, so we do have to sell our cloaking organ because we want to get this improved one. So I was going to go ahead and sell that one. It has a new blurb. So with a great deal of research and exhaustive trials, the Varash, working with the Pa'et, have improved upon their original cloaking organ. No longer does the organ leave behind a noticeable energy signature, making the cloak shipped almost impossible to detect. Yeah, we'll take one of those. All day. We do need to free up 1 ton. Well, who really needs a jammer? The Varash and the Pa'et, working together on Varasi, have grown an organ that combines the tunneling capabilities of the Wraith with the more traditional hyperspace manipulation techniques. It enables a ship to change direction in hyperspace, allowing for multiple jumps to be performed as if performing a single jump. As yet, only a maximum of 10 jumps are possible due to organ fatigue, but it is a major leap forward for Polaris hyperspatial technology. So I'd originally said, I think it lets you do 6 at a time. It lets you do 10 at a time. Oh, that is nice. Okay, so let's demo this and then we'll call it an episode. But this is one of my favorite outfits because it just speeds things up so much more. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this should put us in Kalari. Let's see if it actually does. Absolutely beautiful. Alright, so with that, we're going to call it an episode. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do enjoy making these videos. I hope that, if you found this interesting, maybe go and check out some of the other storylines we have up on the channel. We've got some of these side missions up there too, and more of those to come. And, as always, it's been great doing this. If you liked something in particular, please leave me a comment down below. And as always, until next time, I hope you have a good one.